Good evening and welcome to Audiafile, a channel where I'll be reading to you every other night from a selection of books that I find personally attractive or fun to read. I am the Sandman, and my hourglass has just begun to run. My wish is that I may be a small spark of guidance for those that do not believe themselves to have the time to read in their day-to-day, that the busy-bodied bees may tune in and listen, and find an interest in reading and in stories, the latter of which I love in particular. For those of you that tuned in to the last video, welcome. I'm glad to see you're back. For those of you that are new here, I would be delighted if you could stay at least for a little while. Pour yourself a cup of tea or coffee, sit back, and just relax while I read to you from Brian Jakes' Redwall. Chapter 10. Cluny's army halted at the sound of the Joseph bell. As the dust settled, Fangburn looked to his leader for approval.
"They're ringing that big bell again, Chief. Maybe they think it'll frighten us off."
The warlord's eye rested balefully on his scout.
"Shut your mouth, fool. You've done as I ordered and come back to report. The way Cheese Thief did, we might have been inside that abbey by now."
Fangburn sank back into the ranks. He hoped Cluny had forgotten, but Cluny rarely forgot anything on a campaign. The element of surprise had been lost. Now he must try another ploy, a show of force. The mere sight of a fully armed horde had worked before, and he had little doubt it would prove effective now. Ordinary peaceful creatures were usually panic-stricken at the sight of Cluny the Scourge at the head of his army. The rat was a cunning general, except the times when his mad rage took control of him. But what need of berserk fits for a bunch of silly mice? Cluny knew the value of fear as a weapon, and Cluny was a fearsome figure. His long, ragged black cloak was made of bat wings, fastened at the throat with a mole's skull. The immense war helmet he wore had the plumes of a blackbird and the horns of a stag beetle adorning it. From beneath the slanted visor, his one eye glared viciously out at the abbey before him. Matthias's voice rang out sharp and clear from the high parapet. "Halt! Who goes there?" Redtooth swaggered forward and took up the challenge in his chief's name, as he called back up at the walls. "Look well, all creatures! This is the mighty horde of Cluny the Scourge! My name is Redtooth. I speak for Cluny, our leader." Constance's reply was harsh and unafraid. "Then speak your piece and begone, rats." Silence hung upon the air while Redtooth and Cluny held a whispered conference. Redtooth returned to the walls. "Cluny the Scourge says he will not deal with badgers. He will only speak with the leaders of the mice. Let us in, so that my chief may sit and talk to your chief." Redtooth dodged back as his request was greeted by howls of derision and some loose pieces of masonry from the ramparts. These plump little mice were not as peaceful as they first looked. The rats looked at Cluny, but he was eyeing the abbot, who had joined Constance and Matthias. They appeared to be consulting quietly. Cluny watched intensely. There seemed to be some disagreement between the old mouse and his two advisers. They conferred a while. Then Matthias came forward to the parapet. He pointed at Cluny and Redtooth with his staff. "You there, and you also. My abbot will talk with you both. The rest must remain outside." A rumble of protest from the horn was silenced by a crack from Clooney's tail. He lifted his visor. "We agree, Mouse. Let us in." "But what about hostages for safe conduct?" hissed Redtooth. Clooney spat contemptuously. "Don't talk, fools, talk. Do you imagine a lord of mice and funny robes could take me captive?" Redtooth gnawed anxiously on a split claw. "Maybe not, Chief, but I'd be casting another eye over that badger." Clooney answered quietly out of the side of his mouth. "Don't worry. I've been watching her. A real big country bumpkin. No, these are mice of honor. They'd sooner die than break their word to anyone. You leave this to me." As Clooney and Redtooth made for the gatehouse door, Constance shouted, "Put down your weapons, rats! Throw off your armor to show us that you come in peace." Redtooth spluttered angrily. "Here's tea! Who does that one think she's ordering around?" Clooney shot him a warning glance. "Quiet. Do as she says." Both rats took off their armor and placed it in a pile on the road. Matthias cried down to Clooney, "If you really are Clooney the Scourge, then we know of your tale. It is a weapon. Therefore you will knot it tightly around your waist so that it cannot be used." Clooney laughed mirthlessly. He squinted at Matthias and cracked his tail dramatically. "Young mouse," he called, "you do right to ask this thing, for truly you are looking at Clooney the Scourge." Having said this, he took his tail in his claws and pulled the poisoned war spike from its tip. Tossing it on the armor pile, Clooney hitched his tail in a knot around his middle. "Now will you let us in, mice? You see, we are unarmed." Ponderously, the heavy gate inched open. The two rats passed through the bristling forest of staves. The gate slammed shut behind them. Clooney mentally estimated the walls to be of immense thickness as he and Redtooth, ducking their heads, emerged from the tunnel-like arch into the abbey grounds, where Constance and Matthias were waiting in the sunlight. The defenders followed the two rats closely, menacing them with staves. Matthias rapped out a curt command. "Leave us, mice! Go back to your duties on the wall." Unhappy at leaving the abbot unguarded, the mice hesitated to obey the order to withdraw. Clooney addressed Matthias scornfully. "Here, mouse, watch me shift them." Suddenly he whirled upon the apprehensive creatures. A single eye rolled madly in its socket as Clooney bared claws and fangs, snarling, "Ha! I've got a powerful hunger for mice. You'd best get lost on those walls. Ha ha ha!" Clooney leaped into the air. The mice scattered in panic. Constance stopped the proceedings with a loud, angry bark. "Here now! Enough of that, rat. You are here to talk with the abbot. Get along with you." Matthias was glad he was walking behind the rats. He blushed with shame. Clooney had sent the defenders scattering like butterflies in a whirlwind. Matthias was furious. The enemy now knew he was dealing with untrained and untested soldiers. As the party walked towards Cavern Hall, Clooney could sense hostility emanating from the young mouse who flip-flopped behind him in overlarge sandals. Strange for one so young to be counted as a captain, he thought. Moreover, the little fellow didn't seem to fear him. But enough of that. Clooney would deal with him when the time came. Meanwhile, the big rat gazed about his surroundings in secret admiration. What an astounding place! He allowed himself a peek at the future. One day this would be called Clooney's Castle. He liked the sound of that. Secure from attack, living off the fat of the land, in his mind's eye he saw it all. There was mice and woodland creatures enslaved, living just to serve him. He would hold sway as far as the eye could see. Power, an end to his rovings, a dream come true. King Clooney. Entering the abbey, the party stopped to make way for a pretty little field mouse bearing a tray.
"Oh, Matthias," she said, "I've brought some refreshments for you, and—"
"Thank you, Cornflower. Put them down on the table," said Matthias abruptly. Redtooth nudged Clooney. "Cornflower, eh? Satan's nose. She's a pretty little one for you." Clooney remained silent. He stood insolently watching Cornflower set the table in Cavern Hole. A pretty one indeed. The abbot indicated chairs. They all sat except Clooney, who lounged against the table using the chair as a footstool. He glared at Redtooth though he stood and waited alongside his chief. Idly, Clooney picked up a bowl of honeyed milk and sampled it. Slop! He spat it out on the floor. The abbot folded his paws into the wide sleeves of his habit and stared impassively at the warlord. "What do you want at Redwall Abbey, my son?" Clooney kicked the chair over and laughed madly. As the echoes died around the room, his face went grim. "Your son, ha! That's a good one. I'll tell you what I want, Mouse. I want it all. The whole lot. Everything. Do you hear me?" Matthias's chair clattered on its side as he sprang forward, breaking free from the restraining paws of the abbot. "Listen, rat. You don't scare me. I'll give you our answer. You get nothing. Now do you understand that?" Shaking with fury, Matthias allowed himself to be pulled back onto the chair. The abbot turned to Clooney. "You must forgive Matthias. He is young and headstrong. Now, as to your proposal, I am afraid it is out of the question. Should you or your army require medical attention, food, clothing, or help upon your way, you will find us only too willing to assist." Clooney interrupted rudely by pounding upon the table until the abbot was silenced. He pointed a claw at Redtooth. "Read 'em the articles." Clooney! Redtooth held up a tattered parchment. He cleared his throat. "These are the articles of surrender to be obeyed by all creatures who come under the law of Clooney the Scourge or any of his commanders. 1. Surrender will be total and unconditional. 2. Clooney will execute the leaders of all who choose to oppose him. 3. All property conquered will belong solely to Clooney the Scourge. This includes homes, food, crops, land, and additionally all creatures dwelling on said property. They shall be owned by Clooney." Thwack! Redtooth got no further. Unable to contain himself, Matthias sent his staff ripping through the middle of the articles. As the torn document fluttered to the floor, Redtooth launched himself at Matthias with a snarl. The rat was actually in midair when a huge blunt paw knocked him flat. He lay stunned, with Constance standing over him. "Why pick on a small mouse? Surely a big strong rat like you can deal with an old badger. Come on, try me for size." It was only the timely intervention of Abbot Mortimer that saved Redtooth's life. "Constance, would you please let the rat up?" much as I would like to see him get his just deserts. You must remember, we cannot break the law of hospitality in our abbey. Redtooth staggered shakily to his feet, backing warily away from the badger. Clooney spoke as if nothing had occurred. You, Albert Mouse, you have until tomorrow evening to give me your answer. Not normally given to anger, the abbot stared Clooney in the eye, his face a mask of cold fury. I will not need until tomorrow, rat. You can have my answer now. How dare you come here with your rubber band to read articles of death and slavery to me? I tell you that neither you nor your army will ever set paw or claw inside Redwall, not while I or any of my creatures have breath in our bodies to fight and resist you. That is my solemn word. Clooney sneered and turned on his heel. Followed by Redtooth, he stamped out. On the stairs between Cavern Hall and Great Hall, he stopped and turned, his cold voice echoing between both chambers. Then die, all of you, every male, female, and young one, you have refused my terms. Now you will suffer the punishment of Clooney. You will beg on your knees for death to come swiftly, but I shall make your torment long and loud before you die. It was then that Constance did something that creatures would speak of in years to come. Exerting the full strength of a female badger, she lifted the massive Cavern Hall dining table. It was a huge, solid, oaken thing that no dozen mice could even move. Dishes clattered and food spilled as Constance heaved the table above her head. Her voice was a roar. Get out, rats! Leave this abbey! I'm weary of your voices. Hurry, before I break the laws of hospitality and ask the abbot's pardon later. Go, while you still have skulls. With the best grace he could muster, Clooney walked rather quickly up the stairs, followed by Redtooth, who laughed nervously. Big country bumpkin, eh, Chief? One more word from us, you back there, and she'd have thrown that table and crushed us. Remembering who it was that he had spoken to in this insolent fashion, Redtooth cringed, expecting Clooney to deal him a blow for impudence. But nothing happened. Clooney was standing transfixed, oblivious to all about him. Even Matthias and the abbot who had followed him out, Clooney stood staring at the tapestry. Who is that mouse? He gasped. Matthias followed the direction of the rat's gaze. He walked to the tapestry, his paw outstretched. Do you mean this mouse? Clooney nodded, dumbly. Matthias, still with his paw outstretched, declared proudly, This is Martin the warrior. He founded our order, and I'll tell you something else, rat. Martin was the bravest mouse that ever lived. If he were here today, he'd just take up his big sword and send you on all your bullies packing. Those of you can chop up into crow meat. Much to everyone's surprise, Clooney allowed himself to be shown out. He was like one in a daze all the way back to the gatehouse. A hush fell over the mice on guard as Clooney and Redtooth were let out onto the road. Swiftly the horde gathered around the warlord and his lieutenant. They awaited orders. Deputizing for Clooney, Redtooth called out, Form up! Back to the church, everyone! Clooney marched, automatically, shaking his head in disbelief. Martin the warrior, the mouse who pursued him through his nightmares. What did it mean? As Redtooth marched away, a voice hailed him from the wall. He turned and looked upwards. In the torn articles, the parchment, wrapped around a fistful of rotting vegetables, splattered in his face. Livid with rage, he clawed the foul mess from his eyes and saw Constance leaning over the parapet with a wicked grin of delight on her striped muzzle. The badger shouted mockingly, "Don't forget to call again, rat. I'd be delighted to see you. We've got some unfinished business that I'm looking forward to settling. Just you and me, Red Tooth." Before the rat could reply, she had vanished from sight. Chapter 11. Later that evening, Brother Alf was patrolling with his stretch of wall when he noticed the movement in the ferns at the edge of Mossflower Wood. Constance and Matthias were summoned hastily. They peered over the parapet. Brother Alf pointed to where he had seen the ferns moving. "Over there, to the right of that aspen. Look, they're moving again." Matthias had better nocturnal vision than either of his friends. He was the first to recognize the forlorn figure that rolled onto the grass. "It's Ambrose Spike! He's hurt! Quick, let's get down there!" "Hold fast," Constance warned. "It may be a trap." Matthias was loath to hang about while the creature was lying injured within his sight, but he had to heed his friend's advice. There just might be some of Clooney's rats lying in ambush for any creature that ventured into the shadowy fringes of Mossflower. However, Matthias was growing impatient. "We can't leave poor Ambrose lying out there, Constance. He'll die. We've got to do something." The badger sat down with her snout between her paws. "Yes, we've got to think. Anyone got an idea?" The two mice joined her. Hardly had Matthias sat down when he leaped up again. "I've got it! Stay here. I'll be back in a tick." Brother Alf watched the little figure flip-flopping off. He gave a sigh and shook his head. "What do you suppose our Matthias is up to?" The badger smiled affectionately. More and more she was coming to trust Matthias's natural skill as a leader and tactician. "Don't fret, Brother Alf. Whatever it is, you can bet your habit it'll be an original Matthias gem. That young mouse has got more in his head than a pile of acorns." Brother Alf looked out at the still form in the grass. "It may be too late. Ambrose isn't even twitching. Look, he's not rolled up into a ball anymore." Further speculation was curtailed by the appearance of Matthias. With him were half a dozen moles. Their leader glanced out at the hedgehog. He scratched some hasty calculations on the wall with his claw, then turned to Matthias. "Boy, I think we can get you on Edge Big back, sure. You can get us out in the gate and stand watch." Turning to his team, the four mole, for that was his official title, began discussing tunnel width, coupled with reverse prickle drag, forward traction, and all the other specialist details that are routine to the average qualified tunnel mole. Whispered to Constance and Brother Alf. "Formal and his crew are first class at rescue work. They've often rescued burrowers from cave-ins. All we have to do is stand guard by the southeast wicket gate until they're safely back." "Right, what are we waiting for? Let's go," said the badger. Silently they slid outside the small green painted iron door. Matthias straining his eyes anxiously to see if there were any signs of life in the hedgehog. He still lay about 150 mouse paces from where they stood. The moles unraveled a rope sling. Four more stood watching as two of his team started to dig. Matthias looked on in wonderment. 1 minute they were above ground, a moment later there was a veritable shower of loam and topsoil as they vanished beneath the earth. Nature's own technicians. In a trice they were back, moist snouts poking from the excavation. They made their ground report to Formal. "He be nice and soft, sir. Ain't no rock nor root to stop us, and's as straight fur we been thinking." Satisfied, Formal moved towards the test hole with the rest of his team. "Will you dig ahead, you Woden Warkins? Gaffer and Marge for the upper shoring." He tugged his snout respectfully to Matthias and Constance. "You, gentle beast, bide by here till us back." Another quick shower of soft dark earth, and the moles were lost to view beneath the ground surface. Constance sniffed the breeze as Matthias turned his ears to the nighttime woodland sounds. They watched the ground humping into a continuous hillock that progressed farther as the moles tunneled towards Ambrose Spike. The night remained calm and still, but Matthias and Constance stayed alert, knowing if they failed to observe this rudimentary law of nature, the penalty could be fatal. Matthias did a little shuffle of excitement. "Look, they've come up right into poor old Ambrose. My word, what splendid moles! Good heavens, he's vanished completely. They must have him inside the tunnel." In a surprisingly short time, the tunnelers were back. Emerging from the hole, they carried the hedgehog in the rope sling across their backs, refusing any help from the badger or the mouse. Formal merely tugged his snout. "Nay, nay, you uns on get your paws started." As swiftly as possible, Ambrose was hurried to the Abbey infirmary and sick bay. He was attended by the abbot himself. A hasty diagnosis revealed that the hedgehog was suffering from a long, jagged wound that ran from the back of his ear to the tip of his paw. Brother Alf nodded sympathetically. "That's probably what caused old Ambrose to pass out. Pain and loss of blood. You must have travelled a fair way in that condition. Do you think you'll live, Father Abbot?" The abbot chuckled quietly. He cleaned the long, ugly wound and applied a poultice of herbs. "No cause for alarm, Brother Alf. Ambrose Spike is made of leather and needles. Tough as a boulder, this old ruffian is. Look, he's beginning to come around already." Sure enough, after some peculiar grunts and much caring and uncaring, the hedgehog opened his eyes and looked about. "Oh, my aching ear! Father Abbot, you wouldn't see a poor son of the Spike suffering like this without a drop of last October's nut-brown ale to wake his parched gullet," pleaded. All the creatures laughed aloud with delight and relief at seeing their old friend alive and well once again. Matthias was astonished at the amount of nut-brown ale that Ambrose supped before he deemed himself fit enough to make a report. The hedgehog smacked his lips noisily. "Ah, that's better. Now, let me see. I did as you asked me, gave as many creatures fair warning as I could. Your Joseph Bell helped a great deal to warn everyone. Well, to cut a long story short, it must have been near noon when I stopped at Vole Bank. I told the voles the bad news, and blow me if that little ninny Colin Vole didn't go to shrieking and screaming all over the place as to how they'd all be murdered in their beds. Believe me, there was no way of silencing the daft young thing. Anyhow, his noise must have alerted the pack of those rats who were out foraging. Before you could say knife, they were upon us. There was such a gang of them that I couldn't do anything. I had to curl up. They carried off young Cullen and his mum and dad. But try as they would, there was no laying claws on Ambrose Spike. No, sir. Then one of them had to go at me with the point of an iron churchyard railing. Stabbed away at me, the devil did. I reckoned I was dead. Said I was too spiky to eat, so they dragged the Vole family off, and I lay still until the coast was clear. I made it as far as Mossflower, and that's all I can remember.
Is there any more left in that jug? This wound's giving me jip. I need ale for medicinal purposes, Father Abbot.
Matthias groaned and hung his head in despair. The Vaux family taken captive. Death or slavery was all the wretched creatures could look forward to. Emboldened by the rescue of the hedgehog, Matthias was about to suggest that he and Constance, together with some hand-picked helpers, venture to undertake a rescue mission to St. Ninian's Church. It was as if the abbot and Constance both read his thoughts at the same time. Abbot Mortimer sighed and shook his head at Matthias. The badger was more voluble. Matthias, forget it. Abandon any hopes you have of snatching the Vaux family from under Cluny's nose. Imagine it, a few of us going up against several hundred armed rats in their own camp. Ridiculous. A fat lot of good we'd be as defenders of Redwall with our heads fixed to Cluny's standard. Matthias, you are a very brave young mouse, so please try to set an example to the rest by not becoming a foolish or dead one. On reflection, Matthias could see the wisdom of the badger's counsel. Long after they had all retired for the night, he sat up thinking. 100 mad ideas pounded through his brain, each one wilder than the last. Feeling at a loss, he wandered up into the great hall and stood in front of the tapestry. Without consciously realizing it, he found himself talking to Martin the warrior. "Oh, Martin, what have you done in my place? I know that I'm only a young mouse, a novice, not even a proper Redwall member yet, but once you were young too. I know what you would have done. You would have buckled down on your armor, picked up your mighty sword, gone down to that church and battled with the rats until they released the Vaux or perished beneath your blade. But alas, those days are gone. I have no magic sword to aid me, only the advice of my elders and betters, to which I must listen." Matthias sat down upon the cool stone floor. He gazed longingly up at Martin the warrior, so proud, so brave. What a dashing figure he cut. Looking back down to himself in his baggy green robes and oversized sandals, Matthias felt hot tears of shame and frustration spilling from his eyes and dripping on his young whiskers. Unable to stop himself, he wept freely. The soft touch of a gentle paw on his back caused him to look around. It was Cornflower. Matthias wished he were dead. He quickly turned his face away, knowing she could see his tears. "Cornflower, please go away," Matthias sobbed. The little field mouse, however, would not go. She sat down on the floor next to Matthias. Taking the edge of a pinafore, she softly wiped away his tears. For such a shy little mouse, she had quite a bit to say. "Matthias, don't be ashamed. I know why you cry and grieve. It is because you are kind and good, not a hard-hearted, pitiless rat like Cluny. Please listen to me. Even the strongest and bravest must sometimes weep. It shows that they have a great heart, one that can feel compassion for others. You are brave, Matthias. Already you have done great things for one so young. I am only a simple country-bred field mouse, but even I can see the courage and leadership in you. A burning brand shows the way, and each day your flame grows brighter. There is none like you, Matthias. You have the sign of greatness upon you. One day Redwall and all the land will be indebted to you, Matthias. You are a true warrior." Matthias, with his eyes dry and his head held high, stood up. He felt himself stand taller than he ever had. He helped Cornflower to her feet and bowed to her. "Cornflower, how can I ever thank you for what you have said? You too are a very special mouse. It is late now. Go and get some rest. I think I will stay here a little while longer." The field mouse untied a headband. It was her favorite one, pale yellow, bordered with cornflowers, after which she was named. She tied it to Matthias's arm, the right one just above the elbow, a maiden's colors for her champion warrior. Silently, she crept off. Matthias could feel his heart beating against his chest. He spoke to the image of Martin. "Thank you, warrior. You spoke to me through cornflower. You gave me the sign that I asked of you." Chapter 12. At the church of St. Ninian, Clooney sat in the wreckage of what had once been a pulpit. Red-toothed, dark-clawed, tree-steep and fang-burned, lounged about at his feet on old burst hassocks. Clooney was in one of his strange moods again. He showed little interest in the captive Vaughan family, merely ordering that they be kept under guard until he found time to deal with them. Most of his army slept in the choir loft of the Lady Chapel. The rest were posted on sentry duty outside. Cautiously, his captains watched the warlord. Clooney's long tail swished restlessly. The single eye stared at a carved eagle holding a rotting lectern on its outspread wings. What thoughts occupied the dark, devious mind of Clooney the Scourge? Finally, he looked up and spoke. "Go and get Shadow. Bring him here to me." Dark-Claw and Fangburn scurried off to obey the command. Silently, the others waited, their eyes glinting in evil anticipation. The chief had a plan. Like all of his schemes, it would be cunningly simple and wickedly brilliant. There was no better general than Clooney when it came to strategy. Shadow had been with Clooney for many years. Nobody was sure if he was a rat or a weasel, or even a bit of both. He was very lithe and wiry, and his long, sinewy body was covered in sleek black fur. There was no hint of another color in his coat. It was blacker than moonless midnight. His eyes were strangely slanted, black without any brightness in them. The eyes of the Shadow were like those of a dead thing. He stood before Clooney, who had to strain his one eye against the darkness of the church to make sure he was really there. "Shadow, is that you?" The reply sounded like a whisper of wet silk across the smooth slate. "Clooney, I am here. What do you want of Shadow?" The captains shivered at the sound of the voice. Clooney leaned forward. "Did you see the walls of that abbey today?" "I was there. Shadow sees all." "Tell me true. Could you climb them?" "No beast I know of could climb those walls. Except you. Except me." Clooney gestured with his tail. "Come closer then. I will tell you what must be done." Shadow sat on the top pulpit step. Clooney issued his orders. "You will climb the abbey wall. Many sentries patrol the top of the wall. Take the utmost care. If you get captured, you are of no use to me. There is no point in one alone trying to attack the gatehouse and open the door. It is too well guarded, so forget the gate." Shadow gave no hint that Clooney had inadvertently read his mind. He remained motionless as Clooney continued. "Once you have scaled the wall, make for the main abbey door. Should it be locked for the night, you will use all your skill to open it without any noise. It is vital that you get inside. The first room you will find yourself is the main one. We might call it Great Hall. Walk in, turn around, and on the left wall facing you is a long tapestry covered in pictures and designs. Now listen carefully. In the bottom right-hand corner of that tapestry is a picture of a mouse dressed in armor, leaning on a big sword. I want it.
Cut it, rip it, or tear it out, but get it for me. I must have it. Don't come back without it, Shadow.
Puzzlement was written on the faces of the 4 captains who had overheard the orders. A picture of a mouse. Clooney had never been known as a collector of pictures. Fanburn whispered to Cheese Thief, "What use is a picture of a mouse to the chief?" Clooney heard. He came to the edge of the pulpit. Grasping the sides of the lectern, he surveyed his small congregation like some satanic minister. "Ah, Brother Fanburn, let me explain. I will tell you why it is that you and all your kind will forever remain servants, while I shall always be the master. Did you not see the faces of those mice today? The mere mention of Martin the warrior sends them into ecstasies. Don't you see he is their symbol? His name means the same to those mice as mine does to the horde. In a different way, maybe. Martin is some sort of angel. I am the opposite. Think for a moment. If anything were to happen to me, you'd all be a leaderless rabble, a headless mob. So, if the mice were to lose their most precious omen, the picture of Martin, what would that leave them?" Redtooth slapped his haunches. He rocked to and fro, sniggering with uncontrollable glee. "Brilliant, Chief! Diabolical! They'd just be a crowd of terrified little mice without their wonderful Martin." Clooney's tail banged down on the rotting lectern, smashing it into several fragments. "And that's when we'll strike." The powerful tail lashed backwards, wrapping itself around Shadow's body. It was dragged forward, face to face with his master. Clooney's rancid breath blasted into Shadow's face as he ground out each syllable. "Bring that picture back here to me. Do this, and your reward will be great when I sit on the abbot's chair in Wigwall Abbey. But fail me, and your screams will be heard far beyond the woodland and meadows." Clooney the Scourge had spoken. Well, that's it for tonight. Thank you to everybody who dropped in to listen, and to those of you that stayed long enough to hear my final remarks. You have my gratitude. I hope to see you again next time. Good night, my friend. May your sleep be peaceful and your dreams sweet.